After my sister knocked me unconscious, she went to the room of Percy, the crown prince of the Beijing circle, alone. 2 days later, Percy made his marriage news public. My sister received full-scale attention and was in the limelight. When she came home, she showed off to me. Sister, in the last life, all these were yours. This time, it's finally my turn. She married into a wealthy family as she wished, while I focused on taking the civil service exam. After all, she married a man with super male syndrome. He will cut off the resources and connections of our family in the future. It's better to get a stable job in the government first, so that he can't find trouble with me. 1 second before being knocked unconscious by Arya, I realized that she was also reborn. I fell to the ground and could still vaguely hear Arya's excited voice. This great wealth belongs to me in this life. I saw Arya again 2 days later. I had already adapted to being reborn and sorted everything out. Arya was still immersed in the joy of winning Percy, looking flushed. It seemed that she and Percy had a very good time these 2 days. Then I can rest assured. Percy was very fast. Now the hottest news on all platforms was the marriage between Percy and Arya. The crown prince of the Beijing circle proposes to a Cinderella from the common people. The fairy tale comes true. Arya, the way all girls want to be. The poor young mistress, rising to great heights. Tut tut. These marketing accounts dare to say anything just to attract attention. Sister, you are also reading my news. There was a hint of excitement in Arya's voice. I put down my mobile phone and looked up at her. I saw a smug look on her face. She was almost writing the words villain gloating on her face. In the last life, under the pens of the marketing accounts, the phoenix flying out of the slum was me. It was me who entered Percy's room by mistake. And it was also me who married Percy. It was only after Percy pursued me for a year that I agreed to marry him. Arya's jealousy of me had been sown since the moment I entered Percy's room by mistake. She wanted to imitate me, but ended up as a joke in high society. After being played with by those playboys, she was discarded like worn-out shoes. Then, seeing me, the glorious young mistress of the Beijing circle, accompanied by my perfect husband, the seeds of jealousy took root, germinated, bloomed and bore fruit. She drove and killed me on my way to the hospital, and she also died in the car accident she herself created. Now that we are both reborn, she has unhesitatingly seized the life that originally belonged to me. Looking at her excited face, which was trembling a little, I smiled. I nodded and sincerely said to her, "Congratulations, sister." Her super male husband was beckoning to her. Having snatched my life, never give it back. 2 in my last life. The reason why I entered Percy's room by mistake was that my parents drugged the juice I'd drank. Yes, it was my own parents who drugged me. When I was very young, they brainwashed me and Darya. My daughters are so beautiful. In the future, only the richest man is qualified to marry you. Whether you study well or not is not important. Protecting your faces and improving your temperament are the most crucial. It's okay to read more books and cultivate an elegant bookish temperament. Those wealthy families like girls with bookish temperament the most. Don't play with them anymore in the future. You too will marry into wealthy families in the future. What's the use of playing with those kids from poor families? They seem to have forgotten that in others' eyes, they were also poor people. But my parents never thought of changing their lives through their own efforts. Just because Arya and I had good-looking faces, they pinned all their hopes on our faces. It was not until I was in junior high school that I gradually broke free from their brainwashing. I told Arya, "Mom and Dad's ideas are wrong. And on. We should study hard. We can change our lives by ourselves." But Arya immediately told my parents what I had said. That was the first time I was slapped on the face. My father pointed at me and cursed me as a money-losing thing. My mother poked my head with her sharp nails. "I told you not to learn bad things." Since then, my parents didn't like me anymore. Even to punish me, they treated Arya wise as well. Arya always looked at me with a smug and provocative look in her eyes. She even laughed at me with the words I told her every time. Change life by ourselves? Sister, are you stupid? We have such beautiful faces. Men will surely come forward to help us one after another. Only fools rely on themselves. I grew up in such a family atmosphere. After graduating from college, my parents couldn't wait to drug me and send me to the bed of the crown prince of the Beijing circle. And this time it was Arya who went. These 2 days, my parents have scolded me a great deal. My father still kept the words money-losing thing on his lips. My mother also looked down on me even more. Look at your sister. You both came out of my womb. Why don't you have any of the drive your sister has? Useless. The scolding didn't stop until Arya came back. My mother grabbed Arya's hand and asked excitedly, "Is it true? Is the crown prince really going to marry you?" Arya raised her chin proudly. Of course. Isn't it all on the news? Didn't you and Dad see it too? My father was so excited that his face was as red and bright as if he had drunk to gin over Guotou. Annan is still amazing. She took the initiative to win over the crown prince. After saying that, he still didn't forget to look at me with the look of looking at a useless thing. I can't count on you for anything. What else can you do? It's such a waste that you have such a face. Every time my parents scolded me, Arya would watch the fun on the side. Today, she actually spoke up for me. Mom and Dad, don't blame sister either. I also want to blame you. You are so partial. If I hadn't fought for it myself, Percy would have been sisters. My father smiled and apologized to Arya. It's Mom and Dad's fault. But you know, Mom and Dad like you the most. So of course we chose a better family for you. The young master was won by Arya herself. And really hasn't let down our years of meticulous cultivation. My mother sighed sincerely. How dare they say cultivation? I endured the churning feeling in my stomach, congratulated Arya once again, then went back to my room, locked the door, and continued to recite books. I have to pass the exam quickly before they do something illegal. 3. The news of Arya, the poor girl turned princess consort, soon disappeared from the hot search. After all, where are there any young masters and princess consorts in socialism? But the popularity still exists naturally. It can be found as long as you search for it. Arya searches for it every once in a while, and even clicks into her own entry to have a look while having dinner. It seems that her news is more appetizing to her than the dishes on the table. Seeing that I was eating with my head down and not speaking, Arya suddenly put down her phone and chopsticks and said in a solemn tone, "Sister, are you still angry with me?" Before I could say anything, my parents started scolding me again. What right do you have to be angry? Even if you were sent to Percy's room. So what? It's not certain whether you could latch onto Percy or not. Do you really think you have the skills like your sister? My father even said, just like a log. In bed. You must be just a breathing corpse. It was a mistake for me to choose to send you to Percy's bed in the first place. The food in my mouth suddenly couldn't be swallowed. A father can say such things to his own daughter. Of course. I'm used to it. I'm not surprised at whatever disgusting words he says. I forced myself to swallow the food in my mouth. Looked up at Arya with a smile. No. I think this is very good. I'm truly happy for you. Even more for myself. In my previous life, after marrying Percy, I also wanted to take the civil service exam. But Percy united with my parents to put pressure on me, and even sabotaged me. In order not to let me take the exam, my father even deliberately made a mistake and was locked up for a few days, leaving a criminal record. In this life, no one is holding me back. Why don't I seize the time? I quickly ate a few more mouthfuls of rice and got up to go back to my room. Before closing the door, I also heard my mother saying, maybe she knows she has no hope. So she has started studying again these days. I think she has become stupid from studying. My father snorted coldly. I let her go to college to gild her. Why is she still studying now? Arya smiled and comforted them. Mom and Dad, don't be angry. If sister wants to study, let her study. Anyway, when I marry Percy and become the young mistress in the Beijing circle, won't you have everything you want? Do you still need to rely on sister? My parents were both gratified and excited upon hearing this. And An has been sensible since she was a child. Much better than your sister. Hearing this, I relaxed a little and closed the door. Arya is afraid that I will compete with her for Percy. So knowing that I'm devoting all my energy to studying, she is very satisfied and even can't wait for me to do so. That's really great. When I pass the civil service exam, it will be the time for Percy and Daria to go to hell together. Arya is already in hell now. Percy is not a good man. Just as I opened the book, it suddenly became lively outside again. It should be someone coming to give gifts. In my previous life, after Percy publicly announced his marriage to me, the threshold of our family was almost broken. There was a knock on my door. It was my father asking me to go out to meet the guests. I just pretended not to hear. After a while, I heard my father say to the guests, she should be reading with headphones on. If she doesn't come out, then don't force her. It's not an important person anyway. The other party is too eager to flatter our family at the moment. How dare they be picky? The eldest daughter must be a good learner. Don't disturb her. For in the following days, there were an endless stream of people coming to our family to curry favor. The gifts my parents received had piled up in the entire living room. And someone even gave my parents a house. The two of them accepted everything. Greed is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. If they hadn't been so greedy and angered Percy in my previous life, how could I have almost been tortured to death by Percy? Fortunately, in this life, Arya takes my place to be tortured by Percy. It was not until after 10 o'clock in the evening that it finally became quiet outside. There was another knock on the door. And then Arya's voice rang out, "Sister, everyone has left. Open the door. I have something to tell you." I put down my book and went out. As soon as I opened the door, Arya's smiling face came into view. She said with a smile, "Sister, we are moving tomorrow. Pack up your things." But there's not much to pack. I'm here to tell you a piece of good news. Do you know who came just now? It was the Gregory family. Knowing that there is still a daughter in our family, they want to propose a marriage. Gregory family. Gregory? I remembered that in my previous life, after I married Percy, Gregory began to pursue Arya. I thought the two of them would be together until the end. After all, at that time, Arya was already Percy's sister-in-law. Out of respect for this relationship, Gregory would also be kind to Arya. But when they were on the verge of getting married, Gregory suddenly broke up with Arya. Since then, Arya has been reduced to the plaything of a bunch of playboys. Only after my death did I learn that Percy had given the word. If I were with Gregory in this life, I would surely end up like Arya in my previous life. I don't have any intention of getting married right now. Just leave me alone. Hearing this, my mother immediately changed from happy to angry. Do you know what position the Gregory family holds in the Beijing social circle? Although it is not as good as the Percy family, it is more than good enough for you. It's your good fortune that they have taken a liking to you. I looked at my mother coldly. You are treating me like this now. Aren't you afraid that I will rise to great heights and then take revenge on you? My mother was at a loss for words. Leave her alone. My father roared angrily. I've long said that she is a worthless burden. Not even half as good as an Un. My mother narrowed her eyes. And her eyes were full of malice when she looked at me. Serafina, you are a curse. I closed the door and continued reading. Fortunately, no one bothered me anymore. The next morning, they started moving without even calling me. Even better, I could read quietly here by myself without any disturbance. 5 After only a few days of peace, I received a call from Arya. Sister, it's okay if you usually don't show up, but you must attend Percy's and my engagement ceremony. After all, we are family. If you don't come, when the Percy family asks, it will be difficult for me to explain. Besides, you haven't seen much of the world in this life. It's good for you to see the world too. To stop them from pestering me further, I had to agree. Arya also sent someone to bring me a dress. I just took one look at it and threw it aside. Who knows if she might tamper with the dress? Even if she didn't, I didn't want to be too eye-catching either. Of course, the dress Arya prepared for me was as low-key as it could be. She asked me to attend her engagement banquet just to silence the Percy family. After all, it would be unreasonable for her own sister not to attend her engagement banquet. But she didn't want me to steal her thunder. So when she saw me coming to the engagement banquet in my ordinary clothes, not only was she not embarrassed, but she was also quite satisfied with my performance. At this moment, Arya was wearing a haute couture dress, standing beside Percy. And she did have a bit of an air of nobility. Like a daughter of heaven. There were also quite a few people complimenting her. My parents were also exchanging greetings. They had fantasized about this kind of occasion every day, and had learned a lot of rules and etiquette from TV. Being a bit vain usually had some advantages. At least, they wouldn't be embarrassed when they were really in such an occasion. I looked at my parents for a while longer and then withdrew my gaze. When I raised my eyes, I unexpectedly met Percy's gaze. Those dark eyes were still like black holes, containing mysterious and dangerous power. All kinds of things from my previous life flashed through my mind like a lantern slide. The morning after Percy and I had sex, reporters swarmed in and trapped the two of us in bed. Reluctantly, Percy had to marry me. On our wedding night, Percy took me to a door of a room and ordered mysteriously, "Open it yourself." I opened the door. The red and dim light inside made me unable to see clearly what was in the room for a moment. When I saw clearly, I instantly felt as if I had fallen into an ice cave and turned around to leave. "Where do you think you're going?" Percy gave me a cruel smile and suddenly grabbed my wrist and threw me in. It was in that red room that Percy tortured me over and over again with props. "Those reporters were brought by your family. Since you want to marry me so much, then you can enjoy all this." I cried and said that my parents had drugged me, and that I didn't know about the reporters. But Percy simply wouldn't listen to my explanation. That night, I was sent to the hospital because of excessive bleeding. And this was just the beginning of my hellish life. 6 Percy. This is my sister, Serafina. Arya's voice brought me out of the terrifying memories of my previous life. I took a deep breath, suppressed the hatred in my heart and the fear of Percy in my bones, and forced a smile. "Hello." Percy looked me up and down. His gaze was like a snake's stung sliding over me, and I immediately got goosebumps. Arya's voice rang in my ears again, with some affectionate reproach. "Sister. Really? Why didn't you wear the dress I sent you?" I opened my mouth, and my voice was a bit hoarse. "I accidentally dirtied the dress. I've been reborn and won't have any more to do with Percy." I comforted myself in my heart like this, and my tense mood gradually relaxed. Then I handed over the gift box in my hand and gave Percy a proper smile. "Congratulations." Percy curled the corner of his mouth slightly, his voice low and with a hint of his unique coldness. "Thank you, sister." He took the gift box and looked up at me again. There seemed to be a faint glow in the deepest part of his eyes. I knew that was the glow he would only have when he had his eye on his prey. My breath hitched. And then I heard Percy say, "Thank you for your trouble, sister." "Okay, Percy. We still have to greet other guests," Arya said with a smile, then took Percy's arm and left. She didn't forget to turn her head and give me a warning look. I found myself a corner. Fortunately, no one paid attention to me. During this time, only Gregory came over to talk to me. Seeing my cold attitude, he didn't continue to be enthusiastic when being snubbed. After a while, Arya and Percy separated. She lifted her skirt and walked through the crowd with a smile to come in front of me. "Sister, let me take you upstairs to change your clothes." After saying that, without waiting for me to speak, she took my arm and led me upstairs. As soon as the door was closed, Arya's hand was raised. 7. I was quick-eyed and quick-handed. I grabbed her wrist at once and reflexively flapped her with my other hand. Then, as if being electrocuted, I let her go and took an exaggerated, surprised breath. Ah, I thought you were going to hit me. Arya covered her cheek and glared at me resentfully. I blinked innocently. You wouldn't really be going to hit me, right? Arya put down her hand, gritted her teeth, and said harshly, "Stay away from Percy. If I see you flirting with him again, it won't be just a slap. Percy and I are going to register tomorrow. I'm about to become the young mistress of the Percy family. People in the Beijing circle will all flatter me. If I want you dead, I don't need to do it myself at all. There will be plenty of people to kill you for me." She was so eager to show her true face that I was worried for her. I looked around and then affectionately took her arm and whispered in her ear, "There are surveillance cameras here. Be careful. If the Percy family sees you acting like a madwoman, do you think they will still let you enter the Percy family's door?" Arya's body stiffened. I patted her cheek. "Good sister. Don't worry. I won't steal your mister." "Right. Why?" Arya asked in confusion. "Don't you want to marry Percy and become the young mistress in the Beijing circle?" I asked in return. "Then if I were to marry Percy, would you try to sabotage it? We are sisters, aren't we? Even if there's not much affection left, we shouldn't compete with each other, right?" Arya was at a loss for words. And then she smiled awkwardly. "Of course I wouldn't. Just as you said, we are sisters." I sneered inwardly. She wouldn't? In my previous life, I was the one who married Percy. And she did a lot of underhanded things to seduce Percy. She even got jealous of me and directly ran me over and killed me with her car. I forcibly suppressed the hatred in my heart and said with a smile, "So, don't worry that I will compete with you for Percy. I've already given the gift and met everyone. I'm going back first." I patted Arya's shoulder. "Sincerely congratulations to you." Arya suddenly laughed. I asked her what she was laughing at, and she shook her head. When I left, she said to my back, "Idiot. Still congratulating me. If it weren't for your own incompetence, everything I have now should have been yours. Helping the people who sold you count the money. Well, she's not an idiot. She knows how to strive for herself. Then let's see what she has strived for herself." 8. The next day, Arya and Percy registered their marriage. She is now the much envied and extremely glamorous young mistress of the Percy family. Tonight is their wedding night. How will Arya spend it? In this life, it was Arya who entered Percy's room. But my parents also found a reporter and made a big fuss about it the next morning. Percy would naturally not let Arya off, just as he didn't let me off in my previous life. On the afternoon of the third day after registering the marriage with Percy, I received a call from Arya. I was still reading. "Calling me so early? Do you want me to congratulate you? Anon. When do you and your brother-in-law plan to have the wedding? Where are you going for your honeymoon? Are you at home?" Arya interrupted me. Her voice sounded a little hoarse. Was she out of the hospital? I curled my lips and replied faintly, "Yes. Wait for me at home," Arya said and hung up the phone. TSK. With a torn perineum. She was out of the hospital so soon. It seems that Arya's physical condition is a bit better than mine. I continued reading. I don't know how long it had passed when the doorbell rang outside. I had changed the lock, and my parents and Daria couldn't get in by themselves. The door opened, and Arya's pale face came into my view. I let her in, closed the door, and asked knowingly, "Why is your face so pale? What's wrong? You don't need to act anymore. Serafina, you've also been reborn, right?" Arya's walking posture was obviously very strange. It could be seen that every step was torture for her at the moment. I knew this feeling all too well. Arya looked at me coldly. "No wonder you didn't compete with me for Percy. You knew he was a pervert." I gasped. "Percy is a pervert? What did he do to you? Did he hit you? You're still acting." Arya's voice became shrill. I know everything. I frowned and looked at her in confusion. What on earth are you talking about? Did Percy really hit you? Arya was stunned for a moment. She examined me carefully for quite a while but couldn't find any flaws on my face all along. She was a little shaken. You really haven't been reborn? I pursed my lips. Did he hit your head and make you stupid? What rebirth? Do you want to call the police? Arya took a step back. No need to call the police. She suddenly laughed again. So you also led this kind of life in your previous life. I thought you were really the glamorous young mistress of the Percy family. But that was because you were useless. I'm different. It won't be long before I make Percy fall in love with me. She warned me again. Don't tell anyone about what happened today. Or I'll kill you. Do you hear me? I pointed at her face and said. You better care about your own health first. You really look terrifying. None of your business. After saying that, Arya turned around and left. She had to be very careful when going downstairs. I could imagine that kind of pain. Look, Arya, this is the life you snatched from me. I've said it. Don't you ever give it back to me. 9. I passed the preliminary test. Then I immediately started to prepare for the following re-examination and interview without a break. Fortunately, neither of my parents came to me again. They are busy counting money now. However, I know that their money comes from proper sources. After all, they don't do bad things either. For fear of being discovered by the Percy family. Such a rare and low relationship. Of course, they have to stand in front of others cleanly. Arya hasn't contacted me much in these months either. Instead, I often see news about her. The heir of the Percy family gets married. The bride wears a 10 million worth wedding dress. The heir of the Percy family spends a fortune to buy an island and takes his beautiful wife to spend their honeymoon. In the pictures and videos, Arya is dressed brightly and looks noble. She has indeed risen to great heights. But only I can see that no matter how exquisite the makeup is, it can't hide the tiredness in her look. When she came back to life and knocked me out excitedly, I still remember clearly the excitement and madness in her eyes. Look at Arya now. It has been only a few months, and there is already no luster in her eyes. I looked at my phone for a while and then exited. I just occasionally look at the news about Arya and Percy when I'm relaxing. I'm very busy right now. At this time, my phone received a text message, asking me to report to the unit within the specified time. I've been admitted. The phone rang as well. It was actually my biological father, who hadn't contacted me for months. Calling. He said on the phone, your sister and your brother-in-law will be back from their honeymoon tomorrow. Come back home early for dinner tonight. Don't be so impolite as if you're not part of this family. I let out a breath and said, I got it. 10. My parents have now moved into a large flat in the city center. The two of them live in a house of more than 400 square meters but are served by 4 people. As soon as I got home, my mother greeted me with a big smile on her face. You're finally back. It's been so long. You didn't even say you'd come back to see your father and me. Have you forgotten that you still have parents? I just sat down on the sofa directly. Just say what you want to say directly. My mother and father looked at each other. And my father even winked at her. It was obvious that they were up to no good. It's still that Gregory. He has always been thinking about you. My mother walked over and sat down beside me. Although the Gregory family can't compare with the Percy family, they also have a lot of money. If you marry into that family, you won't have to worry about food and drink not only in this life but also in the next life. Before the exam, I was still willing to be perfunctory with them. But now, I frowned impatiently. I've said that I have no intention of getting married. My father got angry immediately. I've raised you for so many years. You say you won't get married just like that? If you don't get married, where can I get the betrothal gifts? I sneered. Do you still lack that little betrothal gift from me now? Your in-law is the Percy family. How much money can't they have? What kind of attitude is this? My father was so angry that his neck turned red. No matter how rich they are, It was your sister who made the contribution to the family. What have you done? I didn't say anything more. Just at this time, Arya and Percy came in. Several people followed behind them, carrying a large pile of things and then piling them up into a small hill at the door. Arya let go of Percy's arm and was about to run over here. Percy coughed, and Arya's body froze. She then stepped back and took Percy's arm again. With a smile on her lips, Percy walked over with Arya, nodding slightly to my parents. He looked quite presentable. Father-in-law, mother-in-law, long time no see. How have you been during this time? My father's face was full of flattering smiles. Good. Of course good. You and An have been on the island for your honeymoon these months. I thought you wouldn't be back until the Chinese New Year. Percy's thin lips curled slightly, and his doting eyes fell on Arya's face. And An said she missed her parents. So I brought her back. If she wants to go back, she can go back at any time. Father-in-law and mother-in-law, you can also go there and have fun when you have time. That place is really very nice. What do you think? Wife? Arya stood quietly beside Percy, looking dazed, like a soulless puppet. Hearing Percy asking her, she reacted slowly and pulled the corners of her lips into a forced smile. Yes. Yes. My parents only had eyes for money and didn't notice Arya's strangeness at all. Percy then looked at me. I now belong to the country. With this identity, of course, I have nothing to be afraid of. The country will protect me. I greeted Percy's eyes with a smile and said calmly, Brother-in-law, long time no see. Did you and my sister have a good time? The curve of Percy's lips deepened slightly, and a faint smile spread in his dark eyes. I almost forgot about my sister-in-law. Sister-in-law, you can also go to the island and have fun when you have time. This sentence was like a switch, and Arya came to life again. She nodded repeatedly. Yes. Yes. Sister, you can also go to the island and have fun. That island is very interesting. Seeming very satisfied with Arya's performance, he stroked her head with his big hand. Arya's body froze visibly again, and a flash of fear crossed her face. At this moment, she was like a mirror. I seemed to see myself in my previous life. It's just that there was no such island in my previous life. What on earth did they do on the island? I smiled and said, I won't go. As long as you two have a good time. Suddenly, Arya rushed in front of me and grasped my hand tightly. Sister, please go. I'm begging you. Percy coughed lightly. Arya immediately returned to Percy's side. It all happened so quickly that it seemed like just my illusion. At this time in my previous life, Percy was still chasing me. After my parents sent me to Percy's bed, I was as shocked as if struck by lightning, and just wanted to get away from my original family quickly. What's more, not only did my parents send me to a strange man's bed, but they also found a reporter to catch us in the act, and make a big fuss out of it. That year, Percy was extremely kind to me, taking care of every detail, and even healed the pain my original family had brought me. But on our wedding night, everything changed. My salvation turned into a devil in the blink of an eye. I was hurt again, and was even imprisoned in a cage by Percy, chained like a dog. Later, I deliberately hurt myself and cried, begging Percy to let me go to the hospital. Only then did he let me go. At that time, he looked down at me kneeling on the ground, touched my head, and said, mercifully, go. As soon as I got up, his creepy voice drilled into my ears again, darling, you should know the consequences of running away. Speaking of this, he chuckled again, besides, you can't escape from my palm, right? He walked up to me and gently touched my head again. Go. Put on some makeup and a nice dress before you go. I did as he said one by one. Then I went to the hospital. Originally, I wanted to call the police, but I died under the car that Arya crashed into crazily. In this life, everything seems to have been advanced and has also changed. But what remains the same is that Arya, like me in my previous life, has been tortured by Percy. That brute. To the point of having no love for life. 12. My parents asked the servants to prepare a sumptuous dinner. After dinner, seeing Percy get up to leave, Arya suddenly burst into tears and grabbed Percy's hand, begging, "Can I stay at home? Just for one night. Okay?" Percy gently stroked Arya's head with his big hand. "Of course you can. Wife, I'll pick you up tomorrow morning. Behave well at home and don't cause any trouble for your father-in-law and mother-in-law." My parents watched this scene with relief and praised Percy as a good son-in-law and a good husband. I lowered my head to hide the sneer on my lips, and then sent Percy away with them. When we got home again, Arya suddenly burst into tears. My parents were startled. "What's the matter?" Arya's eyes were full of horror. Her gaze suddenly fell on my face, and she walked over in a few steps and tightly grasped my hand. "Sister, I'll give Percy back to you. You be his wife." I slowly pulled out my hand and said with a smile, "Sister, you chose all of this yourself. It can't be changed back." Arya's already pale face suddenly became more terrifying than a fierce ghost. You are reborn, right? So you know everything. You didn't plan to marry Percy from the beginning. She finally realized and pounced on me, choking my neck. Why? Why didn't you tell me?" I pushed her away forcefully and looked coldly at Arya, who was crying hysterically on the ground after falling down, and sneered, "Even if I told you, would you believe me? Didn't I say it in my previous life? Did you believe it? Did Mom and Dad believe it?" My parents were completely confused. "What are you talking about?" Arya, with tears all over her face, crawled in front of my parents and grabbed the legs of their trousers. "Mom and Dad, Percy is a pervert. He's not human. That island is full of men. He made me entertain his business partners, both domestic and foreign. He let those people. Mom and Dad, please save me. Please. Otherwise, I'll die. I'll be played to death by them." My parents finally realized that something was wrong, but the two of them brushed off Arya's hands and took a step back. In Arya's and the despairing eyes, my parents said, "We've raised you for so many years. It's only right for you to sacrifice for the family. Percy won't let you die. Just relax. As long as you behave well, he'll be nice to you." These words made me feel cold all over. Are they still human? Do they think that giving birth to a child is just a tool for them to get rich? I turned around and left. Arya chased after me. "Don't go. I'll give Percy back to you." I looked down at her and shook my head. "It's too late." 13. I reported to the unit according to the time on the text message and officially started working. On my first day at work, I told my leader about my family affairs. And I want to report Percy, the current president of Percy's family group. In my previous life, I was tortured by Percy at home. Before he chained me up and locked me in a cage, he allowed me to walk around the house. Even his study was open to me, without any precautions. Therefore, I knew a lot of Percy's dirty secrets. I remembered another thing. In my previous life, I saw an aerial view of an island in Percy's study. It was the island where he took Arya on their honeymoon. So, in my previous life, he had already entertained those business partners on the island. A list I saw was of those people who went to the island. I told all of this to my leader. The leader looked solemn. "This is no small matter. We need to set up an investigation team." I applied to join this team. The leader nodded. "Naturally. You are the key person." I bit my lower lip. The leader saw that I hesitated to speak, and told me to say whatever I wanted directly. So I said, "I have a sister who has some mental problems. Maybe she has read too many novels. She always says that she is reborn. She is having a hard time now, and will definitely scheme against me. I want to apply for protection." The leader was silent for a while again and said, "Well, I'll send a few people to you. You repeat in detail what you know. Okay. Unit 14 began to secretly investigate Percy. I proposed a way to draw the snake out of its hole. Before bringing Percy to justice, I would not go to work at the unit. The leader disagreed. You are betting on your own personal safety. No way. But there are comrades to protect me. I'll be fine. Leader. I insist. Leader. He looked at me silently for a while and suddenly said, "Why do I feel that you are like Zeus and Duo? This should be a compliment to me." Finally, the leader still agreed to my plan. The investigation team was divided into two groups. One group secretly investigated, and the other group, that was me, to draw the snake out of its hole. And sure enough, Percy didn't let me down. A week later, Percy made a move on me. That night, on my way home, I was stuffed into a minivan. The van drove for a long time before it stopped. I was taken into a single-family villa. In the hall, Percy was sitting on the sofa, exuding a powerful aura all around him. Like Satan, he waved his hand gently, and the people around him left. Percy stood up and walked slowly towards me. His tall figure cast a huge black shadow under the light, tightly enveloping me. His long index finger lifted my chin. And Percy chuckled. "Sister, Arya has told me. She said that in the previous life, you were my wife. No wonder I thought you were very special at the first sight. So we were husband and wife in the previous life. We have to continue to be husband and wife in this life." Suddenly his big hand pressed on my waist and pushed me into his arms. My nose was filled with the familiar cold-toned fragrance on him. And for a moment I couldn't even breathe. Percy's deep eyes swept over my face inch by inch. And the smile on his lips deepened. "So beautiful. This is my wife." As he spoke, he slowly lowered his head. And his lips got closer to me little by little. Almost instinctively, I pushed him away with one hand and raised my hand to slap him hard on the face. Under the bright light, Percy's complexion was cold and white. His cheek was flushed, and bright red blood slowly dripped from the corner of his lips. The man standing in front of me seemed to have become a vampire awakening from an ancient castle again. He stretched out his tongue, licked off the blood on the corner of his lips, and his eyes became more excited. Suddenly he flashed in front of me, pinched my neck and pushed me onto the sofa. He leaned over and pressed down, his voice hoarse. "Honey, let's play an exciting game." I was so frightened that my heart skipped a beat. And just as I was about to shout, there was a sudden pain in my neck. Percy bit my neck and then gently licked the skin on my neck with his tongue. The feeling of pain and nausea made me on the verge of collapse. "Don't move." A stern shout rang out. Percy paused. I took the opportunity to push him away and ran to my colleague. Only then did my breathing return to normal. Great. I was saved. 15 because of my real name report. Soon all of Percy's dirty secrets were found out. He had bought that island long ago and deceived many boys and girls to the island to entertain his clients for him. Just this point was enough for Percy to be sentenced to death. And it was an immediate execution. Before he died, he applied to see me. Seeing me, there was no hatred on Percy's face, nor the fear of impending death. He laughed insanely with excitement. His thin red lips slightly parted. Word by word, "I know you are reborn. Wife. See you in the next life." I told him solemnly, "I belong to the country now. And the country will protect me for all eternity. You don't have a next life. Just die in peace." Percy was executed. The Percy family severed ties with Percy with lightning speed. Undoubtedly, the happiest one was Arya because she was pregnant. That day when I saw her, she gently stroked her belly while showing off to me. "The one in my belly is the heir of the Percy family. Sister, thank you very much for killing that beast Percy for me." I looked at her belly. In the previous life, I was also pregnant and later secretly had an abortion behind Percy's back. Because that child was super male. Will the one in Arya's belly also be super male? Soon I got the answer. That day I was at work when I received a call from my mother asking me to go home quickly. I didn't go back until after work. My mother complained about why I was so late and then said, "There is an extra Y chromosome in the child in an ANS belly or something. It is said to be super male. This child cannot be born." But an un insists on giving birth. What should we do? Sure enough, it was super male. Percy was super male. Is this hereditary? Arya refused to have an abortion no matter what. My child is the heir of the Percy family. All of you keep your mouth shut and are not allowed to tell anyone. Later. For the sake of money. My parents didn't say anything either. Arya had been raising her fetus in the Percy family. After 10 months of pregnancy, the child was finally born. This child was even more super male than Percy. My father's eyes were blinded. And my mother's Achilles tendon was cut. Even so, Arya still regarded this child as a treasure. Mom's future depends on you. You must strive hard. In the future, give everything of the Percy family to Mom. Okay? But that very night, the child stabbed a knife into Arya's stomach. She was sent to the hospital for rescue and didn't go out until more than half a month later. And this was just the beginning. This child was extremely strong. He either pushed Arya down the stairs or hit her on the head with a vase. What completely enraged Arya was that one night when she was sleeping, the child got a lighter from somewhere and set Arya's hair on fire. The quilt caught fire too. And then Arya's whole body was on fire. She had large area burns all over her body and her face was also disfigured. Later, she was driven mad by her ugly appearance and went to find the child in a crazy state. The two, one big and one small, fought. After all, Arya was an adult. In just a few moves, she pinned the child down and strangled him to death. After strangling the child, Arya went completely mad. So she escaped the death penalty and was locked in a mental hospital. Naturally, in my position, I can't do anything to her. However, in her current state, staying alive is the greatest punishment for her. As for my parents, although I can't retaliate for what they did to me before, I won't have any feelings for them either. From now on, what I need to do is to serve the motherland and be myself again.